Welcome to the Marketing and Me podcast. If you're eager to grow your health and wellness business via effective marketing methods while maintaining your own health and wellness, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Leanne Shelton, health and wellness content coach and copywriter at Right Time Marketing. Today, I'm joined by Brittany Davidson, owner of Heels Piercing Studio. Welcome, Brittany.
Hi, everyone.
So I met Brittany at the beginning of the year to get my 6-year-old's ears pierced. She was so excited. And a friend of mine had recommended, or highly recommended, the Heels Piercing Studio for little ears in particular. And I discovered many mothers in my local Mums Facebook group shared the same confidence in Brittany's piercing skills. So I knew where to go. Brittany has been running the business for 2 years now and is a proud member of the Australasian Association. It's hard to say quickly, of professional piercers. Australasian Association. She's also the wife and mum to an almost 2-year-old daughter, Ivy, and who also has a furry sister, aka their cat. So Brittany, tell us a little bit more about you, your business journey, and what you do at the Heels Piercing Studio.
Perfect. So I have been piercing for 13 years. How I got into it was firstly beauty therapy. So I did do a diploma of beauty therapy back in 2008. Did not enjoy it that much. And piercing honestly only made up about, I'd say, 3 hours of a 2-year course that I did. So I then was working in my parents' business, who owned a hair and beauty business at the time. So I did basic piercing for them, based on what I'd learnt. So that was just really ears, nose and belly. And I will say that I did not do this to anywhere near the quality I do it to these days, because I only had very minimal training and didn't really know there was much more available or better as per se. When my parents' business expanded in 2016, we decided to really explore the piercing industry better as per se. So they built me 2 piercing rooms, piercing room and sterilization room really. And that's when I did some further education and courses and got more into needlework and sterilization courses, and really opened my eyes to show how basic the services are that a beauty therapist or a chemist would offer in terms of piercings, as opposed to the professional body piercing industry. So I went from only doing, like very minimal piercing work to sort of doing everything. That meant getting more into first aid. It opened my eyes to the broader industry, where there's a lot more training available, more so overseas though, not really in Australia, but I'll touch base on that a bit later. But basically I'd say that I'm still learning. There's so much learning to be done all the time. And I've got, lots to touch on later, but that's sort of the intro. And then from there, my parents retired from their jobs in 2018. So I got left with, do I start my own thing or do I seek employment elsewhere as a piercer? Which I was 6 months pregnant at the time. And so I realized that no one was really going to hire me. So I decided to go it on my own. By that, I was just making various phone calls to see where I would be able to rent a space to offer the body piercing. I did find one, which I'm still there. So I moved there at 6 months pregnant, so starting my own thing. And I moved from a busy shopping centre being Castle Towers to a small business park as well, big business park, but a small shopping strip as per se. So I was a bit nervous about that. And then Ivy decided to come prematurely. So I only was running it for 5 weeks, and then Ivy came at 7.5 months pregnant roughly. So I went back to work 3 days later.
Whoa. Commitment.
I realized I couldn't, unfortunately, as much as I wanted maternity leave time, it was, if I didn't do it, I would lose an opportunity to create my own business, because I only had just started out on my own. So I was working 7 days a week with the baby. That was obviously helped with grandparents looking after her. I know she even made a few trips down to the salon a couple of times.
I was gonna say, was she like on a baby carrier and you're just like piercing with her?
No, not that simple. But if it worked out in her nap time and I was just doing one job, like there was and the clients obviously knew, but the baby did come along in the very, very early stages after her 6 weeks injections and everything. That is not as a little premature baby that was unhealthy. So no, she actually stayed in hospital for many weeks actually, and I was working while she was in hospital because
true.
I could only visit her 3 times a day, and they would only want you there for half an hour. So working actually took away from the pain as such of not having your child at home, and it made that time go quicker. And then when I brought her home, I had a couple of weeks off. So that was good. But yes, so right now, due to coronavirus, I would say I'm finally on my maternity leave. So,
yay! Bit delayed, but yeah, well deserved.
So 2 years now down at Bella Vista, and it's been awesome. I'm glad I made the decision I did. As much as I said I didn't like working the first year of her life, it had to be done to get myself into a position to be able to be a mum and have a business and get it all to work somehow.
And how did you find the new location, like being in a business park?
I was very wary at first. I thought I would lose a massive amount of clientele because Castle Towers is obviously a very busy shopping centre. I still get people to this day come in and they're like, oh, we've been looking for you since you closed at Castle Towers a few years ago. So it's still, a lot of people don't know that that's where I moved to. But I had one recently and she's like, I'm pretty sure you pierced me 3 years ago and I've been searching for you and I finally found you. But yes, sorry, going back to your initial question, I was concerned, and I did the first few months, 6 months was slower than what it was at Castle Towers, but all of a sudden it just started to get busier than what I ever was at Castle Towers, which shocked me. Maybe don't sell as much jewelry because people aren't shopping as per se, but I couldn't believe that. That's honestly thanks to you guys, thanks to clients, that's word of mouth and people recommending me, because like you said, you don't just have impulse walk by, let's get a piercing, because that's just not how it is where
tattoos maybe, but
yeah. I was nervous, but it worked out for the better, and I'm just shocked that that people, yes, supported me as much as they did and followed me. And there are plenty of people that they all know who they are, like how much they refer me or how much, like I said, they followed me. They brought their kids along, like when I'd pierced them a few years ago, they brought their next sibling and so forth. There was one other point I wanted to raise, sorry, brain freeze, second. One good thing about Bella Vista, I'll say, is that I wasn't controlled by hours as you are in a shopping centre. So I was able to do, you know, people are working full time. I was now able to go and do a piercing at 7 o'clock or 7:30 at night, being next to a restaurant that has long trading hours. It benefited that complex. We were able to trade later. And that actually worked as well, having Ivy, because when my husband came home from work, I could then go to work. So even though I say I was working full time with a child, like some of it might have just been multiple nights per week because I could work. I didn't have to be abided by a normal 9 till 5, and that appealed to clientele. And then the only thing I really noticed in terms of differing clientele is that at Castle Towers, I would get a lot more school kids. So the 16, 17-year-olds that, you know, have finished school and they pop up and get a piercing. I don't get that at all in Bella Vista, but I did start to get more mothers at Bella Vista, whether that's mothers getting pierced or mothers bringing their children to get pierced. So the demographic of the services I offered really changed, which it's been great. Like it's been great seeing a lot of mums and kids. It was just, and it's kind of, I don't know how that, obviously the shopping centre attracts more kids, but I can't believe how much it changed dramatically. I wasn't expecting that. So. Yeah.
So if it's a 16 or 17-year-old over 16, they don't need parents' permission to get piercings, do they?
Correct. Apart from there's certain piercings they can't get, which are ones, dermals, which are ones that we like implant into the skin, which I did stop doing in Bella Vista because the insurance policy for it is different, and I was only ever doing a handful of them a year. So when I'm only doing a handful of something, it wasn't worth then having the insurance. They also cannot get genitals, which I don't offer either. So I do have some places, if you wanted, I recommend you to those. The only other restriction is nipple piercing, which is a very grey area. In every state in the country, you have to be 18 plus. New South Wales is technically 16 plus, but like I said, it's a grey area. We could get in, yes, we can technically do it, but we can also get in a lot of trouble. So the group that I'm a part of, which we'll mention more later, the Australasian Association of Professional Piercers, our rule is 18 plus to protect us and also protect the youngers. And I completely agree with that. And if you're a member, you must abide by those rules, no ifs, no buts. So.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Yeah, better be safe than sorry. 100%. And so what other piercings do you do? Obviously ears, nose.
Yeah, so in terms of the ears, we can really pierce anything on the ear as long as the anatomy permits it. So ears is the number one piercing just because I can do so many different things. In terms of the face, we've got nose, septum, eyebrows, lips. A lot of those piercings are very I have a lip piercing, but lip piercings are very uncommon these days. Like if you think about it, think about how many
people. More of a 90s thing, wasn't it? Like the 90s.
Yeah, lips and eyebrows, definitely 90s. And I really only do a handful of them a year these days, which is crazy when I work 5 days a week to say that I only do, say, 5 eyebrow piercings a year, but that's just what the trend is. And then the others are belly button, so navel piercing still pretty big, and nipple piercing is big, but obviously for the right age group.
Oh, there you go. And so how are you managing in the current climate? You said obviously your salon's closed at the moment. So what are you doing instead?
So I have gone to be a full-time mum. So that is interesting because when sort of this happened, I realized I have never really had my child on like so many days in a row. Like normally I have 2 full days off, and even those days I'll be on the phone, I'll be sterilizing, and Ivy just kind of slotted in my routine, not in a don't mean that in a bad way, but I just had a busy life and she just fit into the gaps I had. And now I am responsible for her 3 meals a day, which I have never been. So I'm learning, I got to cook a lot more. So yeah, cooking, cleaning, full-time mum. And then the other thing is I am expanding. So I currently rent a room. So I am opening a new studio as long as council DA all goes effectively. So we've been in council for many weeks now already. Yesterday I spent doing more things required for council. And then once we finally get that, I'm hoping to get in there while I'm closed, get it cleaned, get it set up so that way when I can reopen, I'll be reopening in a brand new shop. So I am busying myself, which is days are kind of flying, which is kind of weird when you've been home now for 2 weeks straight. So self-isolation and the more people that adhere to it, the faster we can get back to normal.
Yeah, exactly. And how's the new venue going to be different to where you were?
So how I rent a space right now. So the new premises is mine. It is a shared premises with another girl. However, the premises is massive and it'll be like fenced off as per se. So my new piercing room is 10 times the size of my current one. So that's huge. And I think it'll be one of the biggest piercing rooms basically ever, because piercing rooms are normally quite small things. So it's a massive room. It's at the very front of the premises. So I've got nice frosted windows the whole way across. I get really nice natural light in there, which I think will be a nice change as opposed to boxy, normal piercing rooms situations.
Fluoro lights, yeah.
I do have a second room as well, which will be technically the sterilization room, but I am completely disposable, which I might elaborate a bit more on that later. So I technically don't need a sterilization room because I don't deal with dirty tools, but that's it will be the sterilisation room. There'll be a waiting room, of course, which will be shared with the other girl. However, there'll be nothing in the waiting room that affiliates my business and her business. It'll just be a nice shared waiting room for all the clientele. 5 car spots, which is crazy because the Bella Vista area is just mental. So
hard to park there. It's good on weekends.
But yeah, basically just, you know, nice and big. And I think something else is, I don't know how long this COVID situation is going to go on for, but being able to have a piercing space where you're just not coming into contact with many people, like, and things, as opposed to, you know, like busy shopping centers, or just be nice to have not shared with, I share with a few other people. Obviously my room is my room where I am and no one's allowed in my room, but there are a lot of other renters. So it'll be good to just be myself. And I think that allows me grounds to potentially hire someone in the future. I have had a lot of people come to me for jobs, especially over the last 6 months. I have not developed a ground for that as of yet. What I want to do, I think the first thing I'd want to do is I need a receptionist for Saturdays, because I do get booked out, and that means I can't answer the phone calls that come in or things like that. So I think the first thing would be a Saturday receptionist I'd be looking at when we get back to normal.
Yeah, that'd definitely be handy. I can imagine, because you can't really answer the phone while you're piercing, because then and then if you've got a full day as well, then you can't really get back to those phone calls.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I was facing that as a problem. Oh, we're in April now, so definitely probably since November I've been having Saturdays have been an issue with communicating with people. Even if you know, if I'm running 10 minutes late or clients running 10 minutes late, I can't then communicate with other clients. And something that I do allow appropriate times for all my clients, but if I have someone that happens to faint or not feel well after a piercing, and they need extra time in the room, that can then throw out my entire day. It doesn't happen often, but it always happens when you're really busy.
That could be me. Yeah, so I know you have a very strong opinion when it comes to piercing and only use sterilized needles. Could you please elaborate why?
Yeah, so this one's a big one. I feel like every question's a big one, actually. But so I like to say I come from, as you heard me say before, I come from a background where I used to use piercing guns. So I do know how they work, how they are cleaned. I'm not coming from an elitist view of I've only ever used needles and it's the best way because blah, 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 blah. I can actually talk both sides. Had I known what I know now, I would have never touched a piercing gun before, but I didn't know all of that. That's why I was saying it's all about growth and all the further training I did. So firstly, the cleanliness aspect. So obviously every needle is single use for every client and they come sterile. So no germs are being transmitted between clients because the equipment is brand new. On the terms of that, I often will use little like forceps on the ear. I might use scissors just to do some not cutting work on the skin, but cutting work on the needles. I use a catheter needle, so they've got plastic in them, and sometimes I need to cut some bits of plastic. It really depends on the types of earrings we choose for your child, and then that determines whether I have sterile scissors or not. But everything I use is single use for every client. So those forceps come sterile when they're single use, the scissors come sterile and they're single use. Now the marking pen is a massive thing. So the marking pens as well come sterile and single use. Now, so every client, that's their pen, and I dispose of it after the service. When you're getting pierced elsewhere, and by elsewhere I could refer to basically everyone that doesn't follow these practices, aren't registered or haven't got this prior knowledge, they use the same pen on everyone. So the same pen's being used on 400 or 500 people. The pens last that long. Now we dot the ear, right? And then, yeah, we've alcohol wiped, but alcohol wiping doesn't kill all germs. We're dotting the person's ear. We could be dotting their nose, their tongue, their nipple. You don't know what. That bacteria is all sitting on the ear, and then the operator pierces directly on that dot, injecting that ink into the bloodstream. So you've got a new piercing, an open wound, and you've just put a range of bacteria into that hole. Yeah. So when
gross.
That way, I know. And it's just such a simple thing that people overlook because, like I said, I overlooked it for years. That's how a beauty therapist told. Here's a pen. We don't know how old it is. how many people it's been used on, but that's what you mark up people's skins with. I even have nurses that have come to me and they're like, this is amazing, you have your single-use pens. That's how protocol should be. Surgeons are meant to do it, but even some don't. And I just find that shocking because, you know, we're cutting where we have marking pens. So one big thing I'll always say, if you're doing anything that involves a pen, whether it's a tattoo, a piercing, a surgery, it should be a brand new pen and it should be sterile. So opened, brand new, up for you. And it makes perfect sense when you think about it. So I know I've gone a bit off the topic of needles and guns, get back to that in a second, but I just wanted to really touch base that everything is sterile and that pens are a massive thing to watch out for. Now, in terms of going to the gun, so the gun can't be sterilized. Now, alcohol wiping is not sterilizing. Alcohol wiping only kills a certain amount of germs and a certain type of germs. So sterilizing is an autoclave or a statum, whereby things go into the machinery, and they might have a pre-process as well. They might be ultrasonic first or whatever the protocol is, but it goes into the machine for an X period of time. It heats up to 135 degrees and has to be held there by the machine for a certain amount of time for it to be sterile. And then it comes out and there's checks that we can do to make sure the load worked and things like that. So a gun can't go into a machine because they melt. They're not designed to go into a machine. So they can never be sterilized. So that's the problem. So alcohol wiping doesn't cut it. The gun itself has little mechanics in it. So I don't know there's different types, but the most common one, it has a circular bit here as per se that the earring goes into, and it also has a drop bit that the backing goes into. So your earring is being opened up, and then it's going into an unclean device into areas that actually can't be cleaned. So the alcohol wipe doesn't go into those little fiddly bits anyway. So not only are we using a dirty pen, we're now putting clean earrings into mechanics of a thing that can never ever be cleaned. When you pierce, just because you don't see blood doesn't mean that we're not ejecting clear fluids from the body into things. So that's the problem with the gun. It will spray things into all these mechanics that we can't ever see. Just because we don't see blood doesn't mean other things aren't there. So that's another big negative. The other thing is that earrings are not verified materials. They're very cheap. They come out of China. Yes, they can be labeled as surgical steel. That doesn't mean it's good for you. Everything can be labeled as surgical steel. I don't actually pierce with steel either. We pierce with titanium and gold and etc. But those earrings are firstly not good for the body. Yes, some people may have no reaction. They might heal up fine, but it is not implant grade and it is not verified by as being implant grade. So you wouldn't be, if a doctor was performing a surgery and putting like a bolt into, say, a shoulder, they would not be using that stuff that those earrings are made out of, but they will be using titanium and verified titanium. One more thing with those earrings, the force of the gun, the blunt force trauma, the earring gets locked onto the ear like this. So the earring has no room to breathe. So the ear can firstly overswell the earring, meaning the earring gets actually trapped inside the ear and you require surgery to cut it out and remove it. The other problem is that because the ear can't breathe, it creates this sticky sort of backup film, especially around the back of the butterfly clip, that all this like bacteria and gunky stuff grows, and that also impacts healing and leads to more chance of infection. They're also very uncomfortable for younger kids as well, sleeping on a chunky butterfly clip digging into the sides of their face while they sleep at night. Not very good. Whereas everything I use has either got a flat back or a round sort of bell back, so it offers types that are comfortable for them. And also my earrings will always have movement, so you will never have that issue with overswelling, nor will you have the sticky build-up forming. Yes, you can still get a little bit of build-up, but not the build-up that's not removable like the butterfly clip backs do. And then the last one I'll make point as per the difference as well is needlework is accurate. So where you see your dot, I put that needle straight on the dot, and when I'm ready, I poke it through and poke it out. The gun free shoots, so you kind of push it forward a bit, but you don't know that you're actually getting on that dot. It's got a broad circle where it can hit. If you come and you have really thick earlobes, then your piercing is probably going to be accurate, but then you run the risk of the overswelling issue, as I said. But if you have normal, standard, thinnish earlobes, the gun is very inaccurate, and that's why you'll see piercings at different not even. And the other thing is the gun also angles the earrings towards the head. It doesn't go as straight as what the needle is. So a lot of people have very funny pointing out things or different angles because the person operating the guns just picked it up and banged it. And how those people get their certificates on how to use those guns, trainer comes out. Now, I was actually a verified trainer when I used to use a gun. Cardboard ear. I give the cardboard ear to someone, give them a gun, and they just shoot this cardboard ear. They then have a certificate to start piercing your ears. So
Wow.
I was a verified person that could issue someone a certificate based on them shooting a cardboard ear. So that means they've got no first aid training, they've got no sterilization training, they've got no bloodborne pathogens training. Yeah, so that's why I have a big thing against some places in particular. They literally just have half an hour training on a cardboard ear. They have no other training. So big thing is I had an incident many years ago where someone with training such as that had their client faint, and they had no idea what to do and just walked out and left the person flat on the floor, fainted on concrete floor, where other people had to come over and rush. I was not in the place at that time. Like, I was informed of the incident later, but that's the risk you run. You have people that have no idea what to do with a client in the event of that, and they obviously freak out because they got no things. If you were one of my clients that have fainted on me, you will see that I'm very calm in the situation and know exactly what to do. Obviously, I have a proper bed as well, so the fact that people can lie down as opposed to know where to have them, that's a positive as well.
Yeah. I mean, I know also you mentioned to me previously with a lot of mums in particular want the 2-gun approach, like at the same time. And I know that, what you were saying before about the angling thing, that's a big factor, isn't it? Because 2 people, 2 different sides.
Correct. So, and once again, I come from experience with, I used to do it. There's a bad side and a good side, basically. I always used to have to take the bad side because I was the more experienced operator, but one side will always be straighter, and who's ever on their dodgy side with the client facing the angle, one earring will always be far more angled. And the other thing is, because they're not accurate as well, doing it at the same time, the gun shocks the children's ears. Like, if you've ever watched it, you'll notice they always have a head jolt. You can't physically click at the same milliseconds. So whoever happens to get it first, the other side will always be very off. Whereas needlework, the kids do not jolt their heads. There's no movement at all. Like, it's completely different experience. It doesn't cause a knee-jerk reaction because it's not that blunt force trauma that's going and a spring going off.
Yeah, that loud clicking noise. I remember that because I had gun when I had my 2 ears done.
As did I. Yep.
Yeah. So did you have a particular negative experience that turned you off, or did you come across a story about piercing guns? Like, how did you get informed or change your mind?
So look, nothing overly negative. Look, guns get stuck on the ear about 15% of the time. And there's numerous reasons why they do. Basically, just because they, like I said, I don't think they should be used, but 15% of the time is an accurate thing. You'll hear many of stories of people dealing of that happening to them. Now, like I said, I was doing it for years, so I got pretty good at disguising it, being able to pull the earring off, maybe even re-piercing it without people knowing that that's what happened. But like I said, I didn't know any better at the time, and that's a common occurrence that happens every day where piercing guns are being used. So the gun gets stuck. So that's a big thing. But what turned me off is just knowing in the end how dirty the whole procedure was, and the fact that I could be spreading bloodborne pathogen diseases, and you would never know why someone ends up with HIV later on in life, and it could be from a dirty piercing procedure. So it's more that the knowledge of the hygiene became apparent, and the reason why that became apparent is because I wanted to expand the business, and piercing is what I wanted to do. So when if anything, I just regret not looking into it way sooner.
Yeah. Cool. And so what kind of feedback do you get from people when you say you only use needles, not guns? Is it usually positive or a bit of a mix?
Yeah, usually positive. I try and provide as much information I can when I say it. And the most common thing is, I completely understand that now that you've explained all of that. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, that's what I said. I was like, oh, really? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Do it.
We do talk about EMLA cream sometimes. Now, now, legally, I cannot apply numbing cream because that's a role of a doctor or a nurse, but you can buy numbing cream and apply it yourself. It does have to be applied an hour and a half prior to coming in for it to be effective, but if the parents are concerned at all, that's sort of a great buffer. And I have plenty of kids that do use it, and they tell me I couldn't even feel it with the Emla cream. So that's always a thing that you can do to help combat fear over it. But it's actually, the needlework is less painful than the gun work anyway. So I think that's a selling point as well. So it actually has less after pain as well, because your earrings have the space on them. They're not got that constant like painful throb that the gun can have for quite a number of days.
I remember that, yeah. And so what's involved in your piercing process?
Yes. Okay. So firstly, and this is just sort of general for all piercings, bring client into the room, which has obviously been cleaned, and then wash hands, and then we go through the consent form, go through in that process, going through where we're planning to pierce, and then we'll go through jewelry options. So that can actually take some time, just doing consent and jewelry options as it is. And then, so once all that's selected, I start working on the trolley. So basically there's a sterile field. I buy these little prep packs, and they like open up and spread out, and then everything that's on there is sterile, and there's tissues and cotton swabs and multiple other things in these little prep packs. Then cleaning the ears. So there's quite a few different ways, and each piercer will do things differently, but I alcohol prep all my piercings. There's a couple that we don't, because it can change the shape of where we're about to pierce, but most things alcohol prepped. And then the marking will come next, and then basically we're making sure that I'm happy with the marking, parents happy with the marking, kids are happy with the markings, and then change things if we need to. Then I use iodine as my next prep. So like I said before, alcohol I think only kills about 70% of bacteria, so using the iodine prep next just means you really got all bases covered. Then next, because I've now done everything on the client, the next part is piercing. So hands are washed again at this point. And then after that, I'm only touching sterile equipment, sterile earrings. I double check everything prior to piercing, because there can be a lot of little mechanics with the earrings, and occasionally something might not clip properly or turn properly, or there might be a faulty ball or something. I find it's about 1 in every 50 things is faulty, but you need to pick up that 1 in 50 so that you are not using it when we've already created a hole. I double check the needles in this process, make sure the catheter bit and the needles are working as it should. I've never picked up on a faulty one of them, but it's always good to check everything. Then we're ready for piercing. So, and obviously it's very important to talk to our clients. And this time I do like to let them know exactly what I'm doing, but now this is more the distracting time. So then piercing's done, jewelry goes in. Next is I do some cleaning up, remove any iodine, the blood, whatever else we need to clean up. And then I wash my hands, client comes up, checks the piercing, and then we go through the aftercare procedure, which is backed up by just a sheet that I'll text out, or however we communicate in the first place, it'll go via what our method of communication was.
Brilliant. And I have to say, I was very impressed. The consent form, when you said it to us, like you knew it off by heart.
Yeah,
I was like, well,
I could read it now. Yep.
She knows this. She says this enough in the day. And so, yeah, you mentioned before the Australasian Association of Professional Piercers. Yep. Could you guys explain what the association's all about and what's involved? Is it hard to join, all that kind of thing?
Yeah. So it's a fairly, so the Australasian component of it, so we're a subsidiary of the APP, being the Association of Professional Piercers. Now, the APP is really an American body. Yes, there are members of it all over the world, but it's an American-based thing. So having the subsidiary makes us be able to apply relevant things for our own country, and also establish better support networks and things like that. So there's also a UK subsidiary. I'm not sure if there's any others, or if it's just us two. But basically it's a group that's designed to give all our clients a safe place to come for a piercing, and know that we're all maintaining certain standards, but also to get information out there to the community about the safety and health and risk aspects in regards to body piercing. So that's what it's designed for the community. So for the community, it's to be able to find a safe piercer, but to also get knowledge about safe piercing. And we're here to provide that knowledge, and it's great in terms of if I'm recommending someone for something I don't do, I can say, hop onto the Safe Piercing website and you'll be able to find a registered piercer, or I can just recommend them to somewhere, and I said you can back that up, that they're a qualified piercer based on this. So the reason why we're like with the subsidiary thing, it only came out mid last year, we had we had a meeting in Sydney, which, like I said, we're all over the country, but Sydney was where the first meeting was held. And we voted on there how we wanted to proceed in terms of membership requirements and things like that. So what was decided on was a 3-year plan. So basically, to be a member the first year, you had to abide by a whole list of regulations and guidelines. One, for example, that I'm going to say how it changes over the next 3 years is our machinery, so our sterilizer. By law, sterilizers need to be certified and checked for, do a bacterial check once a year. That's law. So that's part of a requirement in the first year membership. However, next year, they want the machines to be tested for the bacteria monthly. Now, that's not, like I said, that's not an Australian law, but we believe it's a good idea because we know that our machine is working effectively all year round. So that's a difference between stage 1 and stage 2. But there are multiple other differences. There's differences in terms of how the room is set up, in terms of qualifications. So obviously basic year 1, you have to have first aid, you have to have sterilization, you have to have bloodborne pathogens. So we have to have a range of things. So what it does is it brings the whole quality of the piercing industry up. We have to be using certain body jewelry, one thing that's not a requirement at the moment but will be next year, for example, is the use of sterile gloves. So gloves technically aren't sterile, but you can buy sterile gloves, which they're quite a price difference. So next year it's a regulation that everyone must be using sterile gloves. We've got time to sort of implement all these changes. Now, in terms of a new member, if someone was to join the association next year, they have to join on their stage 2 level. So it's not this 1, 2, 3 that's going to exist. It's 1, 2, 3 for now to try and get as many piercers on board and then work together going up those stages. But next year, everyone has to be stage 2. They do not want people operating at different standards. So everyone has to be a blanket standard. So it's more, it's not easier to get into now, but you can work towards it better now. It's going to be harder for someone to come in next year and implement so many different changes. So it's really good. And that's why we voted on this structure, to try and be inclusive and try and get as many people on board as we can while it's easier. And then you can write out a list and be like, okay, so for next year, I only got to do these 4 more things kind of thing, which I'm hoping what I still needed to incorporate was all going to sort of be done in the new premises. Because one thing I need to do, for example, is to have a completely, so one rule is you have to have a basin to wash your hands. That's a complete rule, like very important. But next year the basins all have to be hands-free. So my soap is hands-free, but my tap, my forceps is not. That's not a requirement this year, but it's a requirement next year. So look, if I wasn't moving premises, I'd already have done it, but like I said, I'll be in the new premises hopefully soon, and that basin will be ready to go that way from the get-go. Yeah, I think I answered that all.
Yeah. So it's not hard to join. You just have to be able to meet all the requirements. If you were to join next year, just be prepared. There'd be a lot of things you have to do.
And there's heads of the association as well, so they will help you get up to where you need to and give you information. And like I said, they're very accepting. They want as many people being proper practitioners as they can. So I found them incredibly helpful. If you have to say, hey, I don't know where I can get my sterile gloves from, they'll give you that information. Or where am I getting sterile marking pens from? So they're going to be very good with all of that stuff. So they don't want you to not be able to get in. It is harder for chains to come into the group though, because obviously chains, they're franchises, and there's obviously a lot of, budget implementing in those. So you might have a piercer that says, I really want to be part of this group, but at the end of the day, if their chain doesn't want to spend the extra money on sterile prep packs and sterile marking pens and things like that, they're not going to be allowed to join because they can't get their bosses to pay the extra money. But yeah, I think it's worth it for having the membership and being able to provide that safe service. And people ultimately, as the group expands, we're going to hear more about it. And the other thing is, being a subsidiary of the APP, they have dedicated funds to help their subsidiaries. So this is all a bit on pause now with COVID, but they had actually planned for a trainer to come out later this year who was going to offer a few days worth of classes for us all to improve our techniques and things like that. So there is going to be that stuff happening. So instead of us having to fly over to the States for training, they're going to bring the trainers here for us as part of their outreach program. So there's yeah, ongoing training I think is a great benefit as well.
So at the moment, do you have like a Facebook group, or how do you usually interact with everyone?
Yeah. So we have a Facebook group, and the heads of the group will email out important notices as well to make sure we all get it if someone's not, very active on Facebook. So the most recent interaction was sending us all out closed signs, saying, due to COVID, the AUPP premises are closed, blah, 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 which I actually found super crazy. The sign made the news the other night.
Cool.
So they were posting different businesses with the closure signs, and they posted 3, and our AUPP sign was one of the ones they posted. So then found it wasn't my shop, it was one of the city stores, but still when the guy made the signs, I don't think he was intending his sign to be on the national news.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
And so, you mentioned briefly before the Safe Piercing website. So what's that about? I guess anyone can access that who's looking.
Yeah, definitely. So basically safepiercing.org.au, if you Google Safe Piercing Australia, it'll come up. And that website's a subsidiary of the American one as well. But basically I'll have lots of information on there for you, and that's going to expand over time as well. There's a really great fact sheet on there that talks about the piercing guns and basically goes through everything I just said if you wanted to look that up in your own time. Then there's also a piercer map, so that's where you can find your nearest registered piercer as well. So yeah, and there's also information if someone's wanting to sort of get into the piercing industry, where to start on that. There's a range of, and I think there's some jewelry information, aftercare information, but that's all planned to grow in the future.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, for me personally, I was unaware of all this stuff in terms of safe piercing. So it really opened my eyes. And I think there's probably so many other people out there who have no idea.
100%.
Yeah, so that's really good. Hopefully, this podcast will spread the word a little bit. And I like to ask all my guests, how do you manage your health and wellness?
Yep. So
everyone laughs when I say that.
only because it's not it needs work. We'll start by saying that. So I do have an autoimmune disease. I have Graves' disease, and I don't manage it as best as I should. Yes, I take my medication, I attend my appointments, but diet and some exercise would go a long way. So I know it needs work. So I guess that's what I'm doing now is some free time. Actually, I haven't got into exercise yet, but the diet I'm working on. But all of that stuff. Actually, no, I did do something to manage that. So Graves does, work in, and a lot of autoimmune diseases, stress plays a big factor in it. So upon my diagnosis, about a year ago, I did cut back my days and have since further cut back my days. So I try and not go in there as much, but compact my days a bit more, which added to me being more busy when I'm there, but having the days at home and with Ivy, I believe brought more balance to my life. So that was a good and welcome change that I needed to do. And people have actually been pretty accepting with my closed days. Yes, I do lose some work, but not as much as I thought I was going to lose. And my health is better because of that. Yes.
I think as you said before, because of your location, I guess working by appointment is fine. Like people aren't going to be walking past it going, oh, that's random, it's closed. Like people.
Correct. It's very rare I get a walk-in. And if I do get a walk-in, it's generally when I'm there. The only problem is it'll generally be on Saturday and I don't have time to do it, unfortunately. So, but yeah, people have been pretty good with appointments only. Yes, because I had to make that change with Ivy to be an appointment only based business, as opposed to how I used to work, just being available 9 till 5 most days. So that was a big change, but it's been really well accepted and clients have actually been amazing in terms of that.
Yeah, awesome. And so how can people connect with you?
So I do have my Facebook page, The Heels Piercing Studio. Most people do contact me through the send a message link on there. My contact number's on there to be called. Happy to always take phone calls. And the Instagram I've been working on, it was sort of my last media platform to properly get onto. But since I've been sort of working on that, I've been seeing quite a few more inquiries come through Instagram. So.
Awesome. All right, I'll put all those notes in the show notes so people can connect with you later on, including also about the safe piercing and dissociation as well. But thank you so much for spending your nap time, because it's usually your me time. So,
Yes.
so thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Leanne.
And thanks to you, dear listener, for tuning in. You can find show notes for the episode at marketingandme.com.au. If you enjoyed listening, please subscribe and leave me a rating and review on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, wherever you tune in. You're also welcome to join the Marketing and Me podcast Facebook group, where you can ask questions and discuss recent episodes with other listeners. If you're interested in connecting with me, feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn. Just search for Leanne Shelton. And if you want to learn more about content marketing strategies or outsource it to me, head to my website, riteTimeMarketing.com.au. And until next time, I wish you good health and good wealth.